Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. Positioning, messaging, getting people to say yes. Is it about features? Is it about benefits? Is it about your value prop? No, it's not about any of that crap. And the man who's going to set you straight is Mr. Michael Liebowitz. Welcome to the show, my friend.
A pleasure to be here, David.
So you have a very interesting and very contrarian take on personal branding, psychology of persuasion, neuroscience. We're going to get to all of that in a moment. Okay. But before we get to that, I would love you to share your professional backstory. So what is it that brought you to the work that you're doing today, and what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Okay, this is usually a longer story, but I'll give you the highlights to make it short. Around 2008 or so, I got introduced to the field of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which I went into headfirst. And this is amazing, because since childhood, looking back, you don't know this as a child, but looking back, I realized I've always had a fascination with how people understand each other. And this was when I discovered this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something I'm really interested in. Well, when you're in that world, when you start learning it, other people show up and say, hey, yeah, I'm coming here from this other modality. And you're like, oh, what's that like? And then I just started accumulating all these different modalities beyond NLP of how the human mind works to understand each other, our world, ourselves. And then one day, I'm sitting on my couch. So I don't know what's on TV, but having a background in the orbit of branding. I'm not in that space classically, but I'm in that tangential space. I just said, that's not how brands work in our neurology. This is how they work in our neurology. Oh my God, that's how they, like the light bulb went off, right? And that turned into a talk, an information talk. I have to share this idea. Well, that turned into a workshop, because at one of those talks, some people come up to me and say, we think we need your help. How do you work with your clients? And I don't have clients. I just have an idea. Right? But I said I had a workshop. I developed it with them, and it worked out fantastic. And this business is built from the genesis of just kind of walking forward into this space and just being endlessly curious about how human beings relate to each other, understand each other, and specifically what motivates us to say, I want to work with you. I want to buy your thing.
And, coming from the agency world and the branding world, brand experiences, etc., I'm sure there was a lot of great work that was, I don't want to say misdirected, but sort of aiming at the wrong part of the brain.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Let's talk about that. Talk about the two parts of the brain. And I know that this is sort of a standard thing, but you talk about it in a very interesting and distinct way.
Yeah. So metaphorically speaking, I divide the brain into two parts. And one is the human brain, which does what we think a human brain is going to do. But this is where we do a lot of functions that we think of as making us human. Logic, reasoning, time, social dynamics, language, a whole bunch of stuff. And that's fine. But the other part of the brain is what we're going to call the critter brain, a term I learned from someone else when I just loved it, and so I adopted it. Where this part of the brain just does two things. It does emotions and it does survival. And given the choice between doing all that human brain stuff of logic, reason, and blah, 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 versus survival, guess which one we're going to sort of favor, right? It's the survival part, right?
I'm kind of liking the survival part myself.
Right, exactly. Well, if that's the case, that means that's the part of the brain that's really active in decision making, isn't it? And what the neuroscience teaches us is that there is actually a specific way that we are making decisions about nearly everything that fundamentally peel away all the layers of the onion. It really comes down to how we calculate survival.
Yeah.
And I know in your world, it's all about building trust, right? Your framework is how do you build trust? Turns out the neurology of trust is intimately entwined with the survival state.
Yeah.
And that is to say that trust is actually a function of how we calculate our own survival. So it's good to know how we want to survive so that you can just go talk to those parts of the brain.
Yeah.
That's the shortest pathway to trust.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about, there's some surprising ways to communicate this.
Mm-hmm.
So remind me, if you would, what are the two specific questions that the critter brain is always asking?
Well, actually, we want to communicate to both parts of the brain, the human brain and the critter brain, because the critter brain is making the decision, but the human brain is justifying it. And the two have to work together.
Yeah.
So we work from top to bottom. I usually show this like human brains on top, critter brains on bottom. The main thing that the human brain wants to learn is not your features, your benefits, right? Well, we're taught to like, hey, talk about your benefits. I'm sorry, your benefits. And well, even that's wrong, to tell you the truth. That's like maybe the third or fourth thing you should be talking about. But the real thing that this part of the brain wants to know is, what is the main outcome I get from working with you?
Yes.
And outcomes are not necessarily the thing that you are delivering, right? It's basically, the question is, what do they get when they got what I gave them? Right? Now that I've delivered this thing, what do you have now?
Yeah.
That's the outcome. The best way I've ever heard this stated was that is a saying that says, nobody wants a 1/4-inch drill. What they want is a 1/4-inch hole. Yeah. Right? That's the metaphor. So what's the hole you're actually, the outcome that you provide? So that's human brain. But lots of people can have the same outcome. So you still have competition. You still have that choice of like, well, who? What's the trust building part of that? That's where the critter brain comes in place. And this part of our brain just wants to know one thing. It wants to know, what is your core belief specifically about this business? I mean, we all have core beliefs about lots of stuff, but none of it relates to business, right?
Yeah.
So why is that in the context of the business? And the reason why is the critter brain seems to treat beliefs like candy, really. It's just what it wants to know. It wants to know, are you like me? And if you are, you're safe. If you're not, you might be a threat to my survival.
Yeah.
So if we share the same beliefs or can agree on beliefs, you just became a very survivable option. And the big mistake a lot of business communication makes is they're talking to the human brain. They're giving the human brain a lot of really good, high quality information about how to justify a decision, but hardly anything about how to make the decision in the first place. And that's all belief level communication. But that is the most critical piece. Just share what your belief is. Here's an example, if I may. A client of mine from years ago, like one of my first clients, they made cooking gadgets. And it turns out the core belief in that business had nothing to do with cooking whatsoever. It was the belief of, it's fun to show off. And I use this example because it's great at illustrating beliefs do not have to be profound. They just have to be true. So now that we understand this belief system, that became a messaging strategy around, would you like to be the star of the dinner party? An outcome that relates to a belief about being seen, about being valued, about it's showing off. Now we're starting to talk to an audience.
Yeah, very powerful. So as I was preparing for our interview, I was really thinking about this quite a lot. That's an aspirational, your cooking example is aspirational, but it's alignment with the belief. So yes. I will share a little bit of a quick story from my past. For years and years, and this was mainly when I was working with solopreneurs, and I'm no longer mainly working with solopreneurs, but I would rant against broke-ass losers. And so initially people like, this guy must be an idiot. He's insulting his audience. He's calling his audience names. Right. Presumably, these are people that you want to be hired. Now, I never wanted to be hired by a broke-ass loser, but stick with me on this.
Yeah.
Alignment of belief. If I am ranting and railing against broke-ass losers and broke-ass loser mentality in the entrepreneur world, as I was reflecting on this, Michael, I realized the people I attracted agreed with me that they were acting like a broke-ass loser, and they didn't like that about themselves either.
Exactly.
And they saw me as the conduit. This is the guy that can get me out of being a broke-ass loser once and for all.
100%. And this relates to identity. And identities, well, the creative brain just wants to match an identity. And so how does that relate to beliefs? Well, identities are just beliefs that start with the words I am. So beliefs are how we understand and organize our entire existence, to tell you the truth. I don't have any scientific evidence, like personally, I haven't tested this, but just in my casual observation over the years, I'd say about 80% of all human conversation, not even just communication, like conversation, is really just two people hurling beliefs at each other, right? It's just how we work, and we just call that having a conversation. So what you were doing there is, by pointing that out and saying, you were communicating to the identity of someone who, I don't hold the identity of being a broke-ass loser, and yet this condition seems to be showing up in my world.
Yes.
Oh, crap. So in other words, their experience is not matching their identity. Ooh, talk about a pain point, right? It's not just like you're having the experience of a bad business. Do you want to fix your business? That's one level of addressing their pain. But when you address and what's showing, it's counter to your actual identity as a human being. Oh boy, that's 10x powerful, right? And that's what you were doing. And I presume you were doing a lot more than that. Like, I don't like broke-ass losers. Instead, what I like are, and you were giving like the identity that they wanted to be, or that they knew they were, it just wasn't showing up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think, so you and I have quite a lot in common. I'm imagining another version of this, let's say for your business, is a professional services firm of some kind comes knocking on your door and says, Michael, we have a fairly successful business. You know, we already have $4 or $5 million of revenue. Yep. And I was talking to my partners at a partner meeting last week, and we said to ourselves, there is a $10 million firm hiding in our $5 million company today. Can you help us bust out of that? And it's like, well, so the identity is we deserve to be a $10 million firm. We don't have the marketing or the messaging or the wherewithal to make it happen. So we're kind of stuck at 4 or 5 million. And so our identity does not match our reality. They come across a guy like you and say, hey, can you help our reality match our identity?
Exactly. In fact, you just described one of my current clients right now who literally said those words. We should be a $10 million business. Yeah. And they're doing well, but they know and they are an example of the kind of client I love. Not all the clients I work with, but the one this is the one that really gets me going, is the ones who are so have this attitude of what we're doing is really freaking cool.
Yeah.
We know this is the most amazing thing ever, but we're having trouble getting all the awesome in our head into their head.
Yes.
And it seems like a grind. It's a long sales cycle. It's a lot of trust building. How do we accelerate getting to a yes? And so that's what we do. Yeah. And it's working. I've had experiences where we 2x to 5x customer bases within 6 months or so, just by changing the language, not doing anything else in sales and marketing, not the structure. There's no spend. extra spend or doing an extra thing. It's just about how are you talking about, how are you framing your business? Is the difference that makes the difference.
Hey, super quick station break question. Have you seen our free executive briefing on elevating your CEO brand? Check it out right now at doitmarketing.com/webinar. And now back to the show. So let's say that we have a CEO or a managing director of a firm who's listening in, and they're like, okay, Michael, we've tried everything. We've tried different ad campaigns. We've tried different hero messages on the banner of our homepage. We're experimenting on LinkedIn with kind of going after this value prop, going after that value prop. Tell me the difference between, for example, a value prop versus value articulation, which is one of your areas of expertise.
Yeah, there's different layers of value. The top layer, the superficial layer, is the benefits. And when someone says, hey, we're trying a whole bunch of different value props, they're just focusing on the benefits.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can hit. It often doesn't hit as much as you think it's going to. But they do a lot of A/B testing, and they spend a lot of time basically trying to make an educated guess, and hopefully one of those will hit.
Yeah.
But then there's deep value. This is the value that operates on a psychological level, specifically identity. And this relates to something I uncover with my clients, which is the frame of belonging traits. What are the traits of your business that we can communicate that signal belonging, that signal to someone, I belong in your world? Or you belong in mine. We belong in the same world together.
Yeah.
Belonging is one, and from an NLP perspective, different methodologies use the same language but differently. So from that frame is what's called a baseline state. It's when you say, peel away again all the layers of like, what do you really want? There's only about 7 baseline states that we all want. Love, safety, things like that. One of them is belonging. And we have a hard time existing without these baseline states. Well, when you trigger belonging in someone, you're activating a baseline state that they feel like, I can't survive without this. I mean, you talk to the most isolated hermit on a hillside and ask them, to what community do you belong? And they'll say, well, I belong to the community of hermits, whom I've never met. I just know they're out there. Right? We will actually make up belonging where there is none. And so when you activate that part of the neurology and use these techniques, that is deep value. Yeah. So if a business is trying all these angles, they're trying the surface stuff.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, was it Will Rogers? If you're digging a hole, stop digging. Yeah. Right. Stop digging. Let's focus on how you're focusing on what to communicate. I'm focusing on how do people receive communication.
Let's talk. I want to dig deeper into this kind of what they believe.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the answer is going to be all of the above, but let's unpack it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Is it about what they believe about their problem? Is it about what they believe about the market? Is it about what they believe about their competition? Is it about what they believe about you and your type of service? So for example, someone might believe, well, all consultants are scumbags, or all digital marketing agencies are the same. And so now we're fighting we're trying to replace one belief with a different belief, or should we avoid that kind of conflict and sort of reframe our entire category?
So when it comes to beliefs, by the way, that's an excellent question. And you're right, it is all of the above. And here's how you filter that through. And I call them movements. The first movement I make with a client is we uncover all the beliefs within the system. All businesses are a reflection of the people who run them. They are literally aspects of self. From a solopreneur all the way up to Amazon, right? All of Amazon literally is an aspect of self of Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
right? So was Apple when it was Steve Jobs, and now it is a reflection of Tim Cook. So my job is to find out what beliefs you have about the business. And it could show up in any one of those ways, right? It could be about the marketplace, the industry itself. It could be about how, oh my God, there's too many charlatans out there. I hate that.
Yes.
And yes, you could build a very, very successful messaging strategy, even around that sort of like that silly, oh, this sucks, right? Type of framework. And it's all valuable. And here's why. Yes, it depends on the message, but the way our brains work is we will align with the strongest belief in the room. And the metaphor I give, it's more like an analogy. If the child believes they deserve that candy more than their parent believes they don't, guess who's getting candy?
Yeah.
Right? So the person with the strongest belief wins. And when you base your core messaging on a strongly held belief, whatever it is, even as something as goofy and superficial as it's fun to show off, you're the strongest belief in the room. And that doesn't just come across in person, it comes across in every aspect of communication. And what happens is the people who are kind of already inclined to say yes to it go like, hey, this person really knows what they're talking about. And this relates to another very counter to the conventional wisdom where they say, hey, you have to understand your customer to communicate with them. You got to really deeply understand your customer. And I say, whoa, hit the brakes. You are right, but as with most things I've discovered when it comes to communication, you're only half right. Because the neurology shows us before you can understand your customer, you have to first understand yourself. Why? Because we are all, this neurology, the safety part, the survival part, we are all looking for like kind. So you better know who you are before you can know who like kind is going to be.
Yeah.
Right? There's that old saying, people don't buy what you do, they buy you. It's, we've all heard that. It's not technically true. Again, it's halfway there.
Yeah.
They don't buy you. What we buy is the reflection of ourselves we see in you. So what kind of mirror are you holding up? Well, to figure that out, you have to know who you are. You have to know what beliefs you are bringing into the system. And when you do that, it acts like a beacon to people who share the same belief. And the ones who don't, they will self-eject. If you ever had like, oh, God, I keep attracting these really bad fit clients. And this is the way to never have that happen again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I say it's your message determines your audience, not the other way around.
So let's say we've totally dialed this in. We have drinking, drinking. We have drunk the Michael Liebowitz Kool-Aid. We have backed up the 18-wheeler filled with cash onto your loading dock. And we now have this beautiful identity and belief system, all of these different DNA markers of who we are and how we're holding the right kind of mirror up. A lot of people think, oh, okay, we're just going to change all of our messaging on the website, hit publish, end of story. We are done with the final part of the Michael work. True or not true? Or is this like this goes into everything. This goes into how you answer the phones. This goes into what your invoices look like. This goes into all your social media. This goes into your book publishing. This goes into your keynote speeches. Is this just the beginning, or change the website, hit publish, and we're done?
No, this is the source code for every aspect of communication in the business, both externally and internally. When I mention belonging traits, and this is, I'm glad you asked this question because this is not something I normally like market, but this is a definite thing that happens when a client works with me, especially with larger teams, like the leadership teams, is when we start uncovering belonging traits and beliefs. And the thing we haven't mentioned yet was the meanings behind beliefs. It creates an amazing internal alignment. What we discover is Many people in the business had completely different perceptions of the business.
Mm.
And once those are aligned, I have had CEOs tell me, oh my gosh, our decision making is happening so much faster now. I've had sales on one end of the table, marketing on the other end of the table, and a few other like the operations and the CEOs there as well. But I'm working with one person. Let's say it's a person on sales, and I'm eliciting on a belief. I'm like, okay, let's go deeper. That's a surface thing. Let's go with like 3 layers deeper. Like, what do you really mean by that? And then they say it, and their counterpart over on marketing says, and this has literally happened. They slam the table and like, is that what you've been trying to say this whole year? And the sales guy goes, yeah, I thought that was obvious. And the marketing person says, I thought you meant X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And everyone notices like, oh my gosh, both are legit interpretations of that.
Yeah.
Right. But that's where the friction was. So it's kind of this is all about alignment of how people understand each other. And I'm doing it from an alignment of how does a business connect to an audience to create customers. But oh gosh, internally it works as well. And belonging traits not only describe what's going to make a customer feel like they belong with you, they also describe who is going to be a perfect culture fit employee.
Mm.
You interview for belonging traits. I did a pro bono thing for a friend who said, like, I get these practitioners, he's in healthcare. I get these practitioners, I train them up, they get these mad skills, and then they leave. So I helped her come up with interview questions based on her belonging. First, I had to discover her belonging traits. And then we came with interview questions. And about a year later, she's like, oh my God, I have the best team ever. And they're sticking around. Why? Because she filtered them to activate for what makes them feel like they belong, not because I have some skills I can provide.
Yes.
So it's everything. It's your marketing, it's your sales, it's your presence online. It's if you're giving talks, it's how like it's the tone, the themes, the points you want to hit, the framing. This is all framing.
Yeah.
You know, it's everything.
When you work with clients, I'm curious, are there certain choke points? For example, obviously website copy is one, LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn company profile, but even things like models, right? Visual models, right? The triangles, the 4-quadrant diagrams, the different ways that they communicate what they believe and why they believe it and what their lens onto the universe is. What would be in that content audit of like, okay, here's how we're going to start to externalize this amazing playbook of DNA that Michael built for us?
So I have two answers. I have two parts to that answer. One is I'm going to get super critical nerdy with you because
excellent.
I can do that. When I produce the communication guidebook, which is the document I provide, which is the source code DNA for how this business is going to communicate, and then we use that to create all the other stuff.
Yeah.
In that document, I point out time and motion of language. This is really, really critical for businesses, and no one knows about it because this is deep neuroscience territory. But the language you use can actually put someone else's brain in a certain point in time and in static or active motion. And if you are a business and you believe in efficiency is the thing like, there's too much inefficiency in X, Y, and Z. And when you get rid of all this inefficiency, all these great things show up, right? The belief and the meaning. Great. And if it turns out your language is putting their brain in a static place, right? Where it just doesn't move. That's static and efficient, like lack of movement align for you? No, they don't. You want to use language and verb tenses that are active, usually ending in ing, right? So we want to be careful, like, okay, this is a good, how does this piece of copy, whatever it is, put this brain in active motion, and is it in the present or the future? Another example, I worked with a law firm. They're business attorneys, right? Small law firm, about 5 partners, but mostly they do contracts. And their whole belief system is, it is all about the details. It is just detailed. It's not about how we do our discovery. It's not about, hey, contracts facilitate agreement, which could be someone else's belief. Their belief is a solid contract is all about detail. Fantastic. Details matter. So you want the language to be both static and in the present. Why? Because that's what you want out of a contract. You want it to be done, final, all details finished, and now. I want it done now. Imagine talking about this space when you're putting their brain unintentionally somewhere in the future and in motion where anything could happen.
Yeah, Wild West.
Right. Well, when it comes to their business, that's a bad thing and we don't pick it up. We just pick it up as feelings. Remember, the creative brain only does emotion and survival. Well, the emotion is, ooh, this is weird, right? It's the disconnect. So it gets pretty nerdy in that way. So I'm looking for things like that. The other way that you were talking about friction points, right? Yeah. So I'm looking for primary frames. Every business has a set of primary frames that you should always link your communication back to, no matter what it is. And you don't have to say the primary frames the exact same way every single time. They're frames. It should link to the idea that they're communicating. What happens when you do that is you become known for those ideas. So when you're creating anything, you want to ask yourself, okay, in what ways does this point of view relate back to one of the primary frames?
And give us an example for the unschooled listener who's not familiar yet with the lingo. What is a frame?
A frame is how you see something, right? It's a metaphor in and of itself, which is you have a picture, a frame out like a window frame.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the window frame on the west wall of the house and you see that picture.
Yeah.
And then you look at the east wall of the house. Same house, same location, but different view, right? So how you can sell anything as long as it's framed correctly, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Right? So framing is vastly important. It's your point of view. And this is something that most businesses are so afraid to do, but is so critical, is what is our point of view? What is our theory of the case? This usually relates to beliefs, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Or the best ones often do. And so we want to make sure that your primary frames are always expressed. This is our point of view. And what that does is it creates that safety, that trust. Like, you know what? I have a similar point of view.
Yeah.
I can trust you, says the critter brain. Right? We share the same identity.
Yeah.
And all these things are varied and need to be interwoven together.
Yeah. I want to ask about first mover advantage / category design versus the power of this frame. Because the way you just described it, Michael, one of the most famous and most successful corporate brands that ever did this is Salesforce.com, which back in the early days, their frame was software. No. Right? Like you shouldn't have to install software on your servers. You shouldn't have to be upgrading software. Let us do that. We're going to keep the software in the cloud. So they created that category, right? They were the first mover advantage. Oh my God, we don't have to buy floppy disks in 1998. We can have this company build the software on their servers. We simply tap into it. It's always up to date. It's always reliable. No maintenance on our end. The fifth SaaS company could have a different frame. Today, the 100,000th SaaS company can't play in that same category.
Right.
So are we simply choosing a different, unique frame, or are we reframing the industry to say you're used to this and we're doing that? The way Apple, for example, took
Right.
there were tablets before the iPad, but they said, here's the iPad. And I remember one specific story in one of the publications said, Apple has had years and years and years of success with the iPad. A lot of people think they proved the viability of the tablet market. They did not. They proved the viability of the iPad market.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to that Salesforce framing.
Sure.
That is actually really low quality differentiation and market position. They position themselves into a feature.
Yes. Yes, true.
And what happened? Easily copied.
Yeah, of course.
Right? There's a plumber in my local area. They call themselves the punctual plumber. Right? They're differentiating into a feature.
Yes.
Maybe even a benefit. Well, to lose that differentiation, all that has to happen is 3 more plumbers in the area also have to say, we're going to be on time.
Yes.
We're the always on time plumber,
yes.
right? We're the show up when you expect us to plumber, right? So when you differentiate into a feature, which was the play for Motorola throughout the years, and which is why they kept losing market share and blah, 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 because they had a 3 to 6 month window where that feature was unique, and then everyone copied it, and now we go, now we have to develop the next one.
Here, we have a thin phone. No, now we have a thinner phone. Now we have the thinnest phone until someone else has a thinner one.
Right. Exactly. So all they're doing with that is just proving, they're taking on the risk of proving demand for a feature.
Yeah.
Once it's proven, others will copy. You no longer have differentiation. Another form of differentiation is to differentiate into a niche. Much better differentiation than a feature. Because niches are shortcuts to activating the critter brain. It's like kind, right? We do X, Y, and Z for this specific audience. Oh, I'm in that audience. That's me. We're alike, right? Okay. You can have competition there too.
Yeah.
Right? Oh gosh, they're doing it for that market. We should do it too. Okay. So now there's 7 that do it for that market. And it's like, now I have choice. Now how do I choose? Right?
Yeah.
The highest form of differentiation is belief systems. No one shares your same belief. And this way, a lot of different companies can have massive success in the same market because they're just attracting the people who share the same belief. For instance, let's talk finance, right? A firm that does wealth management. Okay. They do this. They do the thing. And if you ever talk to anyone who does wealth management, they all say the same thing. I do wealth management for high income people. It's like, well, yeah, you and everyone else, because low income people don't have money to invest. Right? So great. You do it for high income people. You and the 200 others I could throw a stick at in any metropolitan area, and it lands within 3 miles of them.
Yeah.
Well, one person can find immense success going into the differentiation of belief about wealth management is how you create a life worth living. Fantastic. Another could go into wealth management from the standpoint of, this is about speed. How fast can you get to retirement? Right? And the belief behind there could be the markets move at speed. You have to keep up. That's a form of a belief, right? And anyone else who's like, oh my gosh, I have to keep up with the market. It's triggering that alignment. That's them. They're not thinking about a life well lived.
Yeah.
They got FOMO.
Right.
The life well lived people, they're not about speed. They're not about keeping up with the market. They're like, who cares what the market's moving fast or slow? Yeah. I just wanted to serve the richness of my life.
Yeah.
So we're talking to two different identities that relate to different belief systems and different value systems. And there's a lot of people in both camps.
Yeah.
So if you just go out there and say, hey, I work with high net worth people, well, they both could do that. So how do I choose? Right?
Yeah.
The one who wants a life well lived versus I have to keep up with the pace of the market. So those two businesses can have a long line of clients, their favorite clients. They get to live in their purpose, the space they love the most, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have to compete.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Very, very powerful. I'm even thinking like for the Speed, the Speed financial services company, financial planning firm, you could have a product or a report called your finish line report.
Yeah.
Or your finish line portfolio. How fast can we cross the finish line?
Exactly.
Right? And so all of these metaphors and brands and sub-brands and all of these things are in alignment with that primary belief.
You got it. The belief is the keystone to the entire, holding up the entire architecture. One of the last movements I do with a client is we work on your offer. How do you frame your offer? But we're looking at it also from asking them the question. Once we have the belief, we can ask the question, well, how are you fulfilling on the promise of that belief? And in about a third of my engagements, we actually find new offers this company should be making, but they aren't.
Yes.
And as one client said, I came for messaging, but I left with 2 new revenue streams.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll give you the example. This was another law firm. I do a lot of professional services just because that's where I network, but it's not the only business I work with. I do a lot of work, just FYI, I do a lot of work with startups, or what I like to call startup energy, people who have like a really cool idea they're trying to bring to the market.
Yeah.
Well, this law firm, their belief, let me see if I can recollect it correctly, is, it's really easy to step into a legal mess and not know it until it's too late. Okay, so that's the belief. So what's the promise? We're going to make sure you don't accidentally step into a legal mess. They do a lot of work with nonprofits. So when we're talking, about their offer and we're refining it, because how you frame the offer, you have to frame an offer that matches the belonging traits, right? And delivers on the belief system. But then we ask the question, okay, what are some other ways that a company like this can step into a legal mess? Oh my gosh, the CEO started talking all about how they're having these janky board meetings that are borderline illegal. And I said, is that something you have experience with? He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, can you show them how to have a legally binding and a legal board meeting? And the look in his eye was like, oh, I never thought about that before, right? We're just asking the question based on the belief system. Anyway, we found that new revenue stream and another one about document handling. It's another area that they were getting into trouble with, that he never thought to create a monthly service, like a monthly recurring revenue service around document handling.
Nice.
So that's an example of how that works. But that you can't get there until you understand the belief and notice how in alignment they are. And now you can sell them all. Like, wait, you're a business attorney and you're training corporate boards how to do a board meeting? How does that align?
Yeah.
It aligns because I prevent you from stepping into a legal mess.
That's right.
That's how it aligns. Another example, I had a client, she, early in her career, she says, I sell life insurance and I do people's taxes. What the hell business am I in? So we did some work together. This is a very early client, and it was a good friend of mine, so I helped her out. Turns out her belief system is, you have to be financially ready for whatever life throws at you. And that's very specific language, whatever life throws at you.
Yes.
Well, she's an immigrant, and this has been her experience of life. And this was the belief system that got her into these fields in the first place, right? They are literally aspects of self. She wants to serve her immigrant community. So in this case, we go directly out there with that belief statement. Hey, I help you be financially prepared for whatever life throws at you, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Under that umbrella, what's called a meta frame, she can do your taxes. She can sell your life insurance. She can help you with IRAs. She can help you plan for a baby. She can help, right? All this stuff. Life is throwing stuff at you. Be prepared. I'm the one who can help you prepare for that. She's not selling taxes. She's competing with everyone else, including all the majors. She's not selling life insurance. Who can you trust? She's selling being prepared for whatever life throws at you. Okay, let's go. That's frame.
Wow.
By the way, that's framing.
Yes.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there.
Well, Michael, the two final questions as we're landing the plane. The final question is, where can people go to get more goodies from you? But even before we get there, if folks were to take one primary message or key takeaway from our conversation today, what would you hope that would be?
Oh, I have so many, and maybe I can just rattle off a few rapid fire.
Sure, perfect.
Number one, I said it before, your message determines your audience, not the other way around. How you talk determines who hears you.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two is something that we haven't talked about, but is so crucial. In fact, it is my signature on my email, is that people don't buy your thing. What we buy is what your thing means to us. We buy on meaning. Meaning is derived from belief systems.
Yeah.
That's the other one. And number three, is you can have the most dialed in marketing system. Your sales process could be perfect, but all of that bottlenecks down to one thing. What are you going to say once you got them? That's where the critical moment happens, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to say once you got them? And will it be effective? Effective how? Most people think effective for making the sale. No. Effective for triggering that safety alignment in the critter brain. The rest of the neurology takes care of itself. That leads to the client. Yeah.
Really great. Well, I know you have some resources and some goodies. How can people get connected and stay connected to more Michael Liebowitz brilliance?
So I have a whole bunch of goodies and stuff on my website, mindmagnetizer.com. There you can register for a monthly workshop. I love giving this workshop. You'll learn all about the neuroscience. You'll learn all about how to apply that to construct really effective messaging. As many ahas as your audience may have gotten in this exchange, there's a ton more in that one.
Yeah.
I make the neuroscience very easy to understand. And I work on the message of everyone in the room. Specifically, I uncover one of your core beliefs that are operating in the business. Normally, when I work with a client, we elicit several beliefs. But in this format, because of time, we just do the one. And sometimes we create the message right there.
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it. And it's a fantastic workshop. It's 2 hours long. So we do a lot of work in the workshop. The other way is I have a couple of ebooks to offer. If you scroll down at the bottom are a couple of ebooks, and one is called The Neurology of Yes. And that will give you the really high level overview of how all this neurology works. For those who like the learning part of this and are like the science, that's for you. I'm always open to, also as I connect with me for a call, there's a 15-minute option and a 30-minute option. I'm always open to a phone call. We don't always have to talk about doing business together.
Amazing. So all of those links will be directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Michael Liebowitz, you are a messaging and value articulation Jedi. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, I really appreciate it, David. This is fantastic.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.